Hi everyone, it's that time again, another of Chris Walk's miraculous, wonderful, inspirational healing stories has unfortunately succumbed to their cancer. So let's add another video to the playlist. Chris Walk, or Chris Beat Cancer, is a regular feature on my channel. He's a cancer influencer of sorts who built up his platform by interviewing people who claim to have healed their cancer naturally. So let's cover the latest inspirational story which has unraveled in the most predictable fashion. Suzan Macco was first diagnosed of stage 2 breast cancer back in 2007. She consulted with some of the best cancer hospitals in the US, but complained that they all offered the same treatment approach. Here she is discussing her first diagnosis with Chris.
I went to Mayo. I went to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and then I had an interview with Seattle Cancer Center.
So you got multiple opinions.
Yes, and they all do the same thing. And I was like, I just can't do that.
What did they do? I mean, what did they tell you?
It's like cookie cutter treatment. You meet with the oncologist. They recommend, first they recommend surgery, and then after surgery, chemo, radiation, and then you end up in the office of the plastic surgeon.
Well, it's a strange complaint to make, isn't it? The reason that these doctors all recommended the same treatment is because they've all read the latest research. Far from being a cookie-cutter approach, this would have been a treatment program specific to her disease. Sure, she was offered the same thing at different hospitals, not because they only give one kind of treatment, but because they all agreed on what the correct treatment for her specific disease should be. I actually think the opposite scenario, where different hospitals offered wildly different treatment programs, would be far more alarming. Anyway, having rejected her options in the US, Suzan went to Mexico, and although she claimed to have no intention of getting surgery, she had the lump and the surrounding lymph nodes removed, which is presumably the exact same surgery she would have received in the US. Only in Mexico they offered a whole load of other hocus pocus, like Rife machines, live blood analysis, allergy testing, and biological dentistry. And because of these pointless, money-spinning additional treatments, Suzan felt like this was a more well-rounded program. What was missing here, of course, is chemotherapy and radiation, which is what she was offered in the US and felt very strongly against. So at this point, it's worth thinking about why Suzan would have been offered chemotherapy and radiation and what kind of benefit she might have expected from that. This is something that Chris and his followers always fail to understand, so it's worth repeating the basics. A cancerous tumor is a mass of growing human cells which is replicating out of control. You can cure a cancer by just cutting out all of the cells. Once those disease cells are gone, there's nothing left to replicate. But that's easier said than done, because often by the time the cancer is big enough to be a noticeable lump, some of the cancerous cells will have already escaped the boundaries of the primary tumor. But drugs and radiation are able to kill these cells. So once you've had the surgery, there's a fairly decent chance your cancer will be cured. But if you take chemotherapy and radiation after the surgery, you have a chance of killing any remaining cancer cells that the surgeon may not have removed, and the cancer is less likely to grow back from those cells. Obviously, it's a numbers game. The additional treatments extend the life of women on average. And that's why these options would have been offered to Suzan. Not as a treatment to make the initial tumor go away, that's what the surgery was for, but as a method to increase her chances of it never coming back. And unfortunately, her cancer did come back. The funny thing is, both Chris and Suzan seem very surprised over the recurrence. Here they are discussing her second diagnosis.
And then how did you find out you had stage 4?
It's kind of interesting how it happened. The scar from my surgery in 2007 started bleeding, and that's what brought me to the doctor. And I wasn't expecting them to say, we think your cancer's back. And that's what happened.
That's really strange, because it was 7 years later and the scar started bleeding?
Yes.
Wow.
I know. It's like, okay.
But this shouldn't have been a shock. It's not exactly rare for stage 2 breast cancer to return. What is quite striking about Suzan's story is the way that she discovered this recurrence. Apparently she went to visit a doctor when she noticed that the scar from her initial surgery was bleeding. It seems quite likely that Suzan wasn't properly monitoring herself. It's pretty typical for someone with a previous diagnosis to receive regular checkups to catch any signs of the cancer returning. The earlier it's caught, the better your chances of long-term survival. Unfortunately, by the time the scar was bleeding, Suzan was already at stage 4. Now, after hearing this news, Suzan rejected the death sentence, as she called it, and embarked on an attempt to cure herself with various types of crank treatments, mostly enzyme pills. This is, quite frankly, it's a silly treatment. If you consume enzymes that are made out of protein, they'll be digested in your stomach acid. So there's no plausible biological mechanism for enzyme treatments taken orally to change the course of breast cancer. Chris and Suzan also waste plenty of time and air discussing mindset, silly diets, and of course smoothies, which may be psychologically and gastronomically beneficial, but they have no curative effect on breast cancer. And here's where we get to the slightly strange part of the story. Following her efforts to cure herself, Suzan claims that she had 3 negative PET scans, or perhaps not exactly negative, maybe her cancer was reduced to a tiny spot. Let's watch a clip.
So when I had the follow-up PET scan in December, I thought, well, I feel better. So I know it's going to be better. I just didn't know how much better it was going to be. And my doctor called me 4 days before I had my appointment. And she said, oh my gosh, all of this is gone. This is gone, this is gone, this is gone, and this is gone. And I was just amazed. And 2 seconds later, after I listened to the message, my husband walks in the door and I have this big smile on my face. And I played the recording for him, and I still have it on my phone. So she said, unbelievable. And then when I went to see her, she came in the room and she came up to me and she gave me a big hug and she goes, what are you doing? And I told her. And do you think she sends me any referrals? No. I told her. I told her everything that I was doing, and she said, I am so happy for you. And it's almost completely gone, and there was just a little pinprick of a spot left. And I've had 3 PET scans now, and they all show the same thing.
So yeah, this is kind of hard to believe. Stage 4 breast cancer is treatable, but it's not considered curable. A false negative on a PET scan is certainly more likely than a miraculous cure by enzyme therapy in a matter of months. And obviously at this point it's pretty clear that Suzan either didn't accurately report what was going on with her treatment, or she genuinely received a false negative. I have to say that my guess is that the story told here has been embellished. Another of Chris's deceased interviewees, April Saul, told a very similar story of a dramatic reversal with doctors begging to know what treatment she was taking. Seems more like wishful thinking to me. So yeah, Suzan Macco's passed away from a cancer in 2021. What can we learn from this story? Why am I making this video? Well, here's the bottom line. Suzan's story is completely unremarkable. She had breast cancer, the surgery in Mexico bought her a few more years, but her cancer later returned. Refusing conventional treatments and probably failing to monitor herself properly didn't improve her chances there. After her stage 4 diagnosis, she was correctly told by her doctor that she would die from her cancer, and she did. And no amount of enzymes, smoothies, positive thoughts, supplements, or salads changed that reality. But here is the fascinating and cunning trick that Chris Walk has pulled on his audience. He's made Suzan a miracle story for alternative treatments not once but twice. Suzan's story was first placed on Chris's website in 2013 under the title, Nurse Refuses Conventional Treatment for Breast Cancer, Goes to Mexico for Alternative Therapies, forgetting, of course, to mention the surgery there in the title. And then when the cancer did return in 2015, he ended up recording her second story as an apparent miracle cure, uploading a video in 2018. Of course, what was really happening here is just the normal development of breast cancer in a woman who chose not to engage with certain treatments or accept her terminal diagnosis when it was given. And sadly, once again, we find ourselves in a scenario where Suzan is both a victim and a perpetrator. Not only did she pop up on Chris Walk's YouTube rubbishing effective medicine, she also ran her own clinic and website selling her useless enzyme therapies and protocols. And although she dithered around the subject in her interview with Chris, she was very obviously trying to persuade her own clients to take the same unwise decisions that she made in refusing effective therapies.
But by the time my clients get to me, they just don't want chemo anymore. And, sometimes they wait too long.
Yes, I understand.
And, sometimes they don't want to quit, even on the enzymes. And, enzymes don't work as well when they're fighting against chemo. So, but you know what? You got to work.
It's kind of like putting gasoline and water on a fire at the same time.
Right.
The water's putting it out, the gasoline is fueling it, and you're like, I can't get anywhere, it's,
Yeah, but you have to meet your clients where they're at, and if I'm like, well, I don't want to take your money if you're going to keep doing that, but.
So Suzan joins the growing list of testimonials that aren't quite what they seem. Unlike in the past, Chris now updates the blog posts, but he still conveniently hides the videos from his YouTube channel, so anyone scrolling his page today won't find Suzan's story. They'll just see positive videos from people that are still alive. And in this way, Chris actively curates survivorship bias. It's pretty much his business model after all. I'll keep making these videos as long as the updates are necessary. And as I always try and remind people at the end of my videos like this one, this isn't really about whether chemo does or doesn't work, and these videos aren't really about how effective alternative treatments are. What I'm trying to show here is how unreliable these natural healing testimonials are, and this is why we shouldn't base decisions about our own healthcare on stories and tall tales from social media. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a comment and rate the video up. This helps other people discover my videos. I would also recommend the excellent blog Fact Checking Chris Beat Cancer. I'll put a link in the description, and Suzan Macco's story was covered on the blog before I made this video. If you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe to my channel. That's how I keep track of how well the channel is doing and whether or not I should keep uploading. And there are more than 40 videos on my channel now, so if you found this one interesting, I'm sure there are plenty more that would be worth your while to watch.